Let's go ahead and get started. Uh, Welcome back to the folks that I know, and if there are new folks that are attending a Zen Peacemakers event for the first time, welcome to you as well. And we are an organization of 6,000 people in 20 plus countries, and we are a room with no walls. So you are welcome to be here. And if you're not a member of Zen Peacemakers, I would encourage you to do so. It's free. It takes you 15 seconds, 30 seconds to click your name and your email address in on the website, zenpeacemakers.org, and join us. Most everything we do is free. Our Bearing Witness retreats in person in Auschwitz and Alabama and the Black Hills are not, but those are week-long events, and that seems obvious. But everything else we do, we endeavor to keep these open and free to everybody. If you can donate to help us out, please, please, please. That keeps us going. I would also encourage you heartily, if you haven't already, to subscribe to the newsletter. It too is free. It comes out on Tuesdays every week, and it lets you know what we're doing, and we do a lot. So stay in touch with us that way. My name is Geoff O'Keefe. I'm the Executive Director of Zen Peacemakers, and it is my delight to host Seth and John today from the Buddhist Coalition for Democracy. I believe my friend David Takahashi here in Boulder connected me a couple of months ago, and David asked me, he said, "Have you heard of this organization?" And I said, I may have seen something on social media. And he said, "Well, it's not surprising because they've only been around for 3 or 4 months." And this was a little while back. And I'm just, so John and Seth and I had a chance to have a conversation, I don't know, month and a half ago. Please mute everybody if you could. Month and a half ago. And it's just remarkable what they have built so quickly. We were just chatting a minute ago, and they'll go into this, but their membership is nearly 1,000. The organization was founded 6 months ago, and there are 450 signatories to their position, their mission on the website. So I'm going to go ahead and mute myself, pass the microphone and the talking stick to Seth and John, but with my hearty thanks for you guys being here to talk to us about the organization. So I'm over to you.
Well, we're really happy to be here to kind of introduce ourselves. We're kind of the new kids on the block in terms of Buddhist organizations. We're 6 months old as of today, just learning to speak and walk and so forth. But I thought we'd introduce ourselves to you so you get to know a little bit about how we formed, why we formed, what our basic tenets and principles are, and the kinds of work that we're doing right now, and also how we view this particular moment in history and where we are, and maybe we can't know what's going to happen in the future, of course, but some of our thoughts about the future or where we might be going. And I want to first say that I feel very much at home here. I share some DNA with Zen Peacemakers. I was ordained as Zen priest by Daikin Nelson Roshi, who many of you know, who was given transmission by Paco Lugavino, many of you know, and Daikin and Paco and I belong to the Pamsula Zen community, Pamsula being named after Jushu Holmes's Pamsula project. So I have a lot of shared DNA with Zen Peacemakers, so it's very nice to be here today. I want to just begin with a little bit of a rambling account of how I happen to know some of the people who helped form this organization. It's kind of it's an interesting story about how people meet and connect and what kind of connections turn out to be meaningful and last. A couple of years ago, I wrote a book about how some of Aristotle's ideas about human flourishing were affecting the way Western Buddhists understood enlightenment. And I had a chapter in there where I quoted some Western Buddhist teachers. So, for example, in Zen, I quoted James Ishmael Ford Roshi and Barry Magid. And in Insight Meditation, I quoted Jack Kornfeld. And in Secular Buddhism, I quoted Stephen Batchelor. And in talking about Stephen Batchelor, I put one paragraph in the book that said, I was very sympathetic to Stephen's project, but that I didn't consider myself a secular Buddhist. And I had maybe one or two sentences about why I didn't identify that way. And after the book was published, I got an email from a fellow by the name of Mike Slott, who is the coordinator or one of the coordinators of the Secular Buddhist Network. And he said, that's an interesting paragraph. Could you expand it into a whole essay and we can print it in our newsletter? And I said, yeah, I'd be happy to do that. And so I wrote an essay and Mike published it. And then a fellow by the name of Winton Higgins out in Australia, secular Buddhist, gave a rejoinder to my article and I gave a rejoinder to his and he gave a rejoinder to mine. And so I was off and running with a connection with the Secular Buddhist Network. And then a little bit later, I was working on a book about virtue ethics and democracy. And Mike said, can you contribute another article on that, to the Secular Buddhist Network? I said, sure. And then a little bit after that, Mike was going to run a panel discussion, online panel discussion. This was during COVID, for New York Insight Meditation Center on engaged Buddhism. And Mike was a presenter, and he gave his particular position, which was a democratic socialist position. And sharing that position was Karsten Struhl, who's a professor over at the New School. And Karsten is also a Marxist, and he presented his opinion on kind of how Marxism informs Buddhism. And Stephen Batchelor presented. And Mike said, I know you're more conservative than we are. We're progressives and we're socialists, and you're just an old-fashioned liberal. But will you come here and give a kind of a dissident, opinion on these things? I said, sure. And then a few weeks after that, a friend of mine by the name of Bill Waldron gave a talk on a book he'd written on Yogacara Buddhism over at Columbia University, and I dropped in for the talk. And Karsten, who was part of that panel discussion, was there too. So it was the first time I saw him in like 3D instead of on a video screen. And Karsten and I had dinner that night. And so I began to form relationships with these people who differed with me in a number of ways. Okay, they were secular Buddhists and I wasn't, and they were socialists and I wasn't, and so forth. But we found we could have interesting conversations about things. We began to trust each other and care about each other as people. And so that was the beginning of a nucleus of a connection. When Donald Trump was elected president the second time around, Karsten and Mike, and I imagine a number of other people at Secular Buddhist Network. I see some of them here. Maybe John, you were there. Maybe Tom, you were part of that. They began talking about, let's form some kind of organization that's going to find a way to kind of resist changes to American democracy, resist the force of fascism in the United States, but do it in a Buddhist way. And Mike said, I want it to be not just us secular Buddhists, but I want to reach out to other Buddhist groups as well. Let's see if we can make it a multiple lineage group. And so Mike contacted me and asked, would you join this organization if we formed it? And I said, yes, but. I said, I don't want it to be a progressive organization like, say, the Buddhist Peace Fellowship or the Buddhist Action Coalition. I want it to be a broad coalition. I want people on the right, libertarians, for example, or conservatives who are now disaffected with the Republican Party. I want them to feel as comfortable being in this organization as Marxists and progressives and liberals might be. And Mike agreed that let's say that as long as you support the basic ideas of individual liberty and democracy and the ideas I'm going to outline a little bit later, as long as you support that and you're Buddhist, you're welcome to be a member of this organization. And I should add, we don't check anybody's Buddhist card to see if they're authentically Buddhist or not. So We're not worried about that. But we said we're open to Buddhists, but if non-Buddhists want to join, we won't check their identity at all at the door. So that's how we got started. And we said, let's start with something. Let's start with an enunciation of our principles, the things that are basic to what we're doing. And let's see if people are interested in signing on to that. So that was the beginning of our call to action. And I want to quote a little bit from the call to action. There are three parts to it. The first part, I'm not going to read at all. It's that long litany of all the horrible things that have happened over the past months that alarm us all. But the second part was, what are we for? We don't want to be Buddhist against Trump. We want to be for something, not against something. So what are the things that we stand for? And so I want to read first, what are our basic principles? What do we stand for? And then there's a second part of what is our resolve? What do we intend to do about all of this? So these are the basic principles. 1, we believe in the structures, norms, and laws that enable free societies to flourish. Those are free and fair elections, the separation of powers, a free press, freedom of speech, religion, and association, the rule of law, an impartial justice system, and a military committed to preserving and protecting the Constitution. 2, we believe no one should be discriminated against or subjected to cruelty on the basis of ethnicity, race, religion, country of origin, political beliefs, age, disability, gender, or sexual orientation. 3, we believe in the inherent dignity and fundamental rights of every individual as affirmed by the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. 4, we believe everyone should have access to the necessities of food, shelter, clothing, a living wage, a decent education, and quality health care. 5, we believe government officials should speak truthfully, avoid conflicts of interest, and not govern to enrich a select few. 6, we believe society flourishes best when free inquiry and creativity are promoted and supported in medicine, science, the social sciences, the humanities, and the arts. And lastly, we believe the planet is imperiled by climate change, ecological destruction, and biodiversity loss, and that governments are responsible for protecting it. And then I said, given all these principles, this is our resolve. 1, to bear witness to suffering. 2, to compassionately support victims of discrimination and persecution. 3, to partner with civic, religious, political, and legal organizations seeking to defend democracy and the rule of law. 4, encourage and support political officials and community leaders to resist attacks on the rule of law and democratic governance. 5, educate about the dangers of autocracy, oligarchy, and kleptocracy. 6, resist and refuse to collaborate with harmful policies and practices. 7, embody and maintain right speech, nonviolence, and loving hearts as we act to defend democracy and protect the vulnerable. And lastly, practice an ethics of care, asking of ourselves and others, what is needed? How can I help? So those were the basic principles. We circulated this around, and we began to get many, many signatories. As I said, now we have about 450 signatories. They include people like Joan Halifax and Bhikkhu Bodhi and Tara Brach and Lama John McRansky and so forth. So, but also includes a lot of ordinary people like us. So we're very happy to have everyone sign on. And if you're interested in signing on, we have that document up on our website, Buddhist Coalition for Democracy.org, and there's a place where you can say, I want to sign this, and we get you up there the same day onto it. And I think it takes some courage in these days to be able to sign yourself, put yourself on a public document that's on line and visible, saying, I care about this and I support this. So I understand that not all of our members have signed on, because some are just anxious about how they might be persecuted and oppressed. But I think one of our main goals is to encourage courage and hope. I think the last thing I'll say before I turn it over to John, and you can fill in your story, is that in our particular vision of things, we don't see us all marching in lockstep. We don't see everyone doing the same thing to protect democracy. In the spirit of not knowing, we really don't know what works. We don't know how to change the ground. I know a lot of people who have theories about exactly how you resist autocracy and so forth. I don't have any theories like that. I just know we each do what we can. And that I think each person has a unique set of abilities and a unique set of personality traits and a unique set of vulnerabilities. And that we each have to decide for ourselves, what it is that we do, to resist autocracy. For some people, that will be organizing and demonstrating and so forth. For other people, it might be writing poetry. I think about Anna Amakhtova writing poetry throughout the Stalinist era, or Solzhenitsyn writing his novels in the Gulag. I mean, everyone will find their own way to find a way to resist and keep the spark of hope and compassion and loving kindness and mutual care alive. So, with that, John, why don't you tell us your story? How did you get involved in all this?
I would be happy to. And Seth, when I was listening to you, I was feeling the passion and the energy that has come to imbue this an infant organization in just a short amount of time, and I'm honored to be a part of it. I will first of all begin by thanking Geoff for the hospitality and Chloe Wright for organizing us, and also acknowledge a mutual friendship here. It was David Takahashi and Julia Sahebian and Ellen Maines, Shambhalians, who brought us together, and I have great respect for these friends who have been a part of my Shambhala life. And to Seth's earlier point, this is really about a multi-voice coalition, and I think that really is what we are all about. My journey or origin story emanates from my having been raised as a Roman Catholic, and then with my identity as a gay Catholic, which in earlier days was more of an oxymoron than it is today, like jumbo shrimp. We've kind of graduated a little bit from that with the current pope, but I after I left the church, I was an itinerant spiritual seeker, and my path led me in a number of different directions. I was reading a lot. I was popping in and out of meditation centers and watching videos and doing all kinds of self-help things until my husband and I moved to Philadelphia in 2017. I got connected with the Jefferson Hospital mindfulness-based stress reduction program and went through their training. And as part of that, and as a follow-up set of recommendations that they offered to us, I discovered that there was a Philadelphia Shambhala Center about 5 blocks from where we live right now. And I went over there and got acquainted with the folks, became so impressed with them and the teachings and just the environment of sitting and meditating in Sangha with nothing to do. And got involved with them in leadership and took a number of classes and moved along the pathway, took my refuge vow, and that has kind of brought me to the current political and social state that, for me, came to a like dramatic crossroads on November the 5th when we had the election. And I have been a lifelong Democrat and a lifelong liberal, socialist, activist. I've worn many different hats, I think, but I was devastated and depressed by the outcome. And I got good advice from my retired therapist spouse who said, you should get into therapy, which I promptly acted on. And during the same period of time, I was beginning to look at emails that I had gotten from the Secular Buddhist Network, which I'd been too busy to pay any attention to before, foolishly. But I started looking at those and I saw that they were planning town halls dealing with where are we and what is next, like the grand unknowing of America post November 5, and I was just trying to figure out where I was, where things are. Joan Didion says that we tell ourselves stories in order to live, and I'd been telling myself a lot of stories, but I really didn't have any kind of direction on where those stories were going. So I found myself on a page like this with all kinds of people in postage stamps talking to each other, crying, ranting, wondering, and I discovered that these were a group of people like us, Buddhists, who didn't have the answers and were looking for a sharing. And my experience was it initially began as a grief group, a support group. And thanks to the direction of Seth and Mike and Karsten, it began to take shape because it moved from not knowing to, okay, there is the unknowing part, but we need to move into witnessing and finding a way to turn that witnessing into action. And so here we are, and we're hoping that today we can have an interactive conversation and answer questions that you might have about the coalition. So back to you, Seth.
Okay, just want to say a few words about what we've accomplished so far and done so far. And we're only 6 months old, so we haven't done a lot. But for one thing, we've been filling out our programming. So, for example, right now we have a monthly interview series with engaged Buddhist leaders that Julia Sahabian is the host for. And people like Bhikkhu Bodhi and Tara Brach and Shinryu Thompson and Joshin and a whole lot of people you may know, Patricia Akeda and so forth. They're going to be interviewed as part of that, one a month. We have a weekly meditation group for activists starting on October 1st. And that's being led by Linda Madaro, who is one of my favorite meditation teachers of all time. Even though she's not in my lineage, I really appreciate her unique style of meditation, which she calls reflective meditation. We have a monthly mindful town hall run by Serge Prangle, where people can come online and just not do talking points, about politics, but to talk about how they're being emotionally affected, by everything that's happening. How are they coping? How are they dealing with it? We have a resource page now. Karen Hirsch has been putting a research page where there are resources from every Buddhist tradition we're putting on there. Different kinds of meditations, different books, different articles that can get you through troubled times in one way or another as you're dealing with the politics. I see Kat here. Hi, Kat. You want to wave your hand? Yeah, Kat is our social media person, and she has, TikTok, Facebook, even Twitter, the evil Twitter, Mastodon, wherever there is social media. Kat has a whole team that's putting out social media materials. We have a Substack column, so that maybe twice a week we put out essays by our members talking about how they're dealing with the moment, and that's free. We offer the possibility of Dana if people want to give it, but otherwise it's free to everybody. We're planning right now, we're working together with the Insight Meditation Community of Washington, D.C. That's Tara Brach's organization, and we're putting together in November a town hall on immigration, and it's going to have teachers like Tara Brach and Lama Rod Owens, and it's going to have immigration lawyers, it's going to have people from vulnerable communities, it's going to have panel discussions, and it's going to be talking about how can we cope with the current crisis with ICE and what's the appropriate thing to do. That's going to be in November. We've been assigning amicus curiae briefs in law. There are a number of, for example, immigrants who've been unlawfully detained or deported, and we've been signing on along with other religious organizations and so far all of our briefs have been successful. All the people that we've signed have not been deported, and one has been released and another is about to be released, or hopefully will be released pretty soon. So we get involved in the legal situation too. We also sponsor or endorse national demonstrations. So things like No King's Day and the May Day demonstrations and Labor Day demonstrations, so we've encouraged the members to get out there and participate. So that's just a few of the things that we've been doing so far. John, you want to add to that? I know one of the things we're trying to do is build a regional system. So maybe you could talk about that, John.
Sure. As we mentioned earlier, we have close to 1,000 members, and we have been recently making a greater effort at identifying exactly where they are, not just geographically, but how they identify, if they identify or are connected with the Sangha. And we are hoping that we can use this information regionally to better mobilize and connect with them nationally and locally. And that will have an important role to play as we're doing more things related to the No Kings marches. We are not an official partnership, but we are working with Indivisible and other groups to take direction from them in areas, for example, like non non-engagement and resisting in a peaceful and nonviolent way, and knowing how to find local resources and law enforcement and essentially diffusing any kind of drama, in quotation marks, that might arise or that could be provoked in any kind of a rally or protest. And we've been fortunate in our outreach committee. Our outreach committee is one of three: outreach, communications, and action. And our outreach committee has just brought on board a database guy who is really very skilled in helping us do this segmentation that I've been describing. And in addition, a demographer, a woman who worked on the U.S. Census and is bringing her ideas to work with Tommy, the database guy. And we're very excited about what this means as we go forward and add more members, and how our signage and our visibility and our impact can increase.
Yeah, I think one of our weaknesses as an organization is that we're dispersed throughout the entire country, so that there are cities and states that might have only one member, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are clusters. We have maybe some people in Berkeley, a cluster in Berkeley, and a cluster in New York, and a cluster in Philadelphia and Atlanta, and Washington and so forth. But the question is, how do we get people to? Many times we want to participate in local actions as well. For example, where I live in the New York metropolitan area, we have a number of ICE detention centers. Right, we have the federal courthouse in Federal Plaza in New York. We have the Delaney Center in Newark, New Jersey. And so that we want to get people to witness at those sites too. But it'd be nice to be out there in numbers. So, for example, every Thursday in New York City, there's what's called the Jericho Walk, where Christian faith groups will march around the federal courthouse 7 times, like the people went around, the ancient Hebrews went around the walls of Jericho. And then they recite a prayer, to kind of tear the walls down. And I think it would be great if we had a Buddhist presence that joined them and maybe recited some Buddhist liturgy at that time too. But we need to get enough members out there. Or the New York Interfaith Center, for example, runs a vigil every week at Columbus Circle in New York, and every week another faith group takes over and runs it. And it would be great if we could have enough members in one area that we could sponsor it one time. So we're looking at ways to partner with other organizations, but we need to find ways to get some kind of critical mass. And when you're dispersed, of course, the country, that's hard to do sometimes. So I think John's effort to kind of regionalize a little bit more gives us some potential to do that, to actually get together physically in 3D and do something together. We also, I should add, we have a calendar that Nick Robinson at the Berkeley Zen Center manages for us online, and we put all of our events on the calendar, and we've been putting all the Peacemaker events on there as well as events from Upaya and other places when they seem appropriate. So we're also trying to kind of make our members aware of what other resources are out there. that they can join in and participate in. And I see some of our members here today on the screen, so it's nice to see you all. John, is there anything else we wanted to say? Do we want to turn things over to questions and answers? What would you like to do, John?
I think it would be good because we've been doing all the talking to get some questions. Not that we have all the answers, but to hear what you're thinking, what you're reacting to when you hear us present, and then maybe we can pose a question for the consideration of the group.
Yeah, I think that's important, John, because as you said, we're here to listen as well as to talk. We're a new organization and we have a lot to learn, and there's a lot of wisdom, I suspect, in this room right now. So we'd love to hear what everyone has to say.
And fellas, we have a small enough group. We can see everybody if you want to use your actual hand, but otherwise, it works really well if you use the electronic hand, and it's down under React, and it says something like raise hand. That's all it says. Raise hand. So if you have a question or a comment or anything to share, or if you're from the organization and you have anything you'd like to add on and contribute, that would be wonderful. Nick, I see you figured out the hand. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Good to see you all. I noticed that we're the Buddhist Coalition for Democracy. We're not the Buddhist Coalition for American Democracy. And in our statement of principles in our resolutions, there are almost all of them could be thought of in relation to world suffering in various places. I wonder if there were discussions about that when the organization was forming, and if there are ongoing discussions about what the capacity of the organization is to respond beyond our borders. Thank you.
Yeah, just two thoughts, Nick, on that. One is that we've had people in other countries say we want to form an affiliate organization. We want to be the Australian, coalition or the Canadian coalition. Forget we have a couple other countries too, and we don't have any way of vetting that yet. So we've kind of left that loose, like maybe in the future, but we don't quite know these people, and do we want them to be affiliated or not? We don't have any process for that, so that's still up in the air. The other is when it comes to issues like the Uyghurs in China or Palestinians in Gaza or what's happening in Ukraine, I personally have been reluctant to take a stand on those issues as an organization, mainly because I want this to be as broad a coalition as possible. I want Liz Cheney to be as comfortable in it as AOC would be in it. And once we begin taking stands on issues that are divisive, I'm afraid that the coalition might break apart. People will want to leave. I'm not happy with that decision. So I at least have been arguing that we ought to keep it as focused as possible. That doesn't mean there are other voices that want to take a stand on Gaza or want to take a stand on something else. What I've been suggesting to people so far is that they have other venues for taking that stand besides this organization. And the other thing that we've decided as a coordinating committee is to have an open discussion about that as a coordinating committee as time goes on, to kind of sift through different viewpoints and what are we comfortable doing together. But it's the same thing with issues like well, there are a whole variety of issues, gun control, even domestic ones where we haven't taken a stand because it's not specifically, about maintaining democratic ideals and so forth. I think that's going to be an ongoing discussion and dialogue, though, over time. Who knows where it will end up? Do you have any response to that, Nick?
Not off the bat, not right now. I appreciate hearing your thinking about that, though, and I'm glad to hear that it is an ongoing discussion, because I think divisiveness can occur in various ways, and by not speaking about things that people feel very strongly about, then there can also be a division created. So it's a complex question.
John, did you want to say any more about that?
No, admittedly, it's a cop-out, but I think we have our hands full with the American dilemma right now.
Kanchi.
Hi, Zuiho.
Hi.
Thank you so much for everything that you're doing. Hi, John. So I am a member, and I was so happy to see you come on the scene because I personally feel that Western Buddhists have not been active enough in political issues. And I really feel strongly that it is our Bodhisattva vow, if we're taking the Bodhisattva vow, to make sure that we are showing up not only to bear witness, but then to take wise action. So I appreciate that. Last night, so I'm in Vermont, and I just moved down to Vermont from Alaska
Wow.
in 2023 because things in Alaska were getting really bad with climate. And also I knew Trump was going to win this second time around. And I really just could not see my son and I going through a whole nother iteration of that in a really red state like Alaska. So I would consider myself a climate migrant, actually. And I bring that in because Middlebury College is where I live. That's the seat of sort of activism. And one thing I've been noticing the last couple of years is we haven't seen a lot of young people with us in our organizing, and especially in Indivisible. I'm part of Middlebury Indivisible as well. So there was an invitation put in the newspaper in the Addison Independent yesterday. Well, it was actually put in last Friday for people in the community to come to Marble Works Yoga Studio and watch the film The Encampments, which is a film about the stands that students took in various universities across our nation around standing up for Palestine and speaking out against genocide and asking universities to divest, etc. And I decided to go because I feel also very strongly that as older adults, we have not communicated and talked enough with the young people. And, you know, the one thing that I'm realizing, I mean, I have a senior in high school, but I had no idea about Charlie Kirk before he was murdered, had no idea. And I'm realizing that, you know, a lot of people are organizing our young people, and maybe not with the intentions that we feel are helpful. I don't think that Charlie Kirk's intentions were helpful, for instance. So I guess my question, I don't know, I hear what you're saying about Palestine. And I mean, I also have been hesitant and reticent to, I don't know, make any really strong stands. I mean, obviously I'm against genocide. I think what's happening there is horrific. But what I realized last night after watching The Encampments, and maybe that is something we could even do as a group, is watch that film together and talk about it. But what I really feel strongly about now that I've seen that film is that we let those young people really be out there on their own. And I mean, I take full responsibility for that myself, even. I just didn't know what to do. I didn't understand what was happening exactly. But I don't know. I think we're at certain spaces at this time where we're going to have to create space for taking some kind of stand around some of these issues. And I'm not saying we have to do it right now, but one of the things I realized last night is that we're losing our young people who should be also organizing with us right now. And they're turning away entirely because they feel absolutely left alone when they tried to take a stand around genocide, when they tried to take a stand around Palestine. And I mean, you know, I'm old enough to tell you that I took a stand against apartheid, a South African apartheid, when I was a young college student in Iowa. And I don't think we can stop taking stands or supporting our young people. So I'm concerned about that. And those are just the thoughts I'm thinking about right now. And that's a lot. So do with it what you may. But I am so thankful for you. I'm so thankful for the Zen Peacemakers. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kanchi.
Thank you, Kanchi. Anyone else? We have plenty of time for conversation and dialogue. Questions? Nancy, I see your actual hand.
I couldn't find that on the bottom of my screen. I am in Westchester County, and I heard you, Seth, right after the election. I don't know who the venue sponsor was, maybe Tricycle. I don't know who it was. Getting together, it was like almost like a grief session. I am sitting in my Iyengar Yoga Scarsdale studio. You all came on my radar and I joined right away. When I met Julia Sahabian, she was Julia Sahabian 50 years ago at Tail of the Tiger. Then it was renamed,
Parcholing.
I'm a predecessor of Shambhala. I was never part of Shambhala, but Trungpa Rinpoche was my teacher in those years. And I, in the past number of years, retook my Bodhisattva vow, Westchester Meditation Center, and restarted other practices. So I met Julia 50 years later at a retreat, and was her Vajra politics class that drew me in. So that's really why I'm here. I will turn 77 in February and do want to do skillful action, and our country is a mess. I just like to, and I want to know how to engage, and I am a Buddhist practitioner, and I want to do skillful action. And I just have to, from my gut and heart, respond to the last person who presented. I don't know your name. You just moved down to Vermont from Alaska. About the complexity of some of these issues. I think I'm a pacifist at heart. I don't, who would support genocide? I think that black and white presentations of issues is, the bad guys, the good guys, very, it just it throws us into dualism, us them. I do feel what's lost in the Gaza genocide protest controversy is what Hamas's mission is, to wipe the Israelis off the face of the earth. And that premise is somehow lost in the horror of this, what is labeled as genocide. So that stated mission of Hamas is never mentioned. And that becomes a complexity in that issue. And I also agree with the woman before that, if we as Buddhists spar, we have to learn how to find the common denominator of our humanity when we talk about ideas that we disagree. So that's, another challenge in these meetings. And I agree with you, Seth. We want to have a meeting place. So anyway, I was just kind of throwing in that my heart kind of gut reactivity to the last person who presented about, showing up with the encampments that are only blaming the perpetrators of genocide, not kind of looking at, Hamas's mission to destroy Israel. That's their stated goal. And all the reactivity from the river to the sea, which triggers people because that's their cry. So these are complex things, good guys, bad guys, genocide bad. Yes, it's horrible. I don't want to see anybody killed. And I'm happy to join with you, and I just want to see how I can engage in skillful action.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you. Before we go to Nancy, Seth or John, any reaction or comment to that, or should we move on?
No, I think it's just an example of how divisive this action can be for people, how triggering it can be for both sides, both for people who care deeply about the tragedy of the Palestinian people and people who care deeply about the safety of a Jewish state of Israel. So it's complex. My advice to people has really been so far just to there are many organizations you can take a stand through, that it doesn't have to be through the Buddhist Coalition. It could be through other organizations you belong to or as a private individual, but everyone who feels strongly about it should take action about it, that they're called to feel. It's just that I'm careful about not wanting to fracture our organization as people do that.
Seth, I would just pick up on your point and say that finding the right balance of sensitivity and skillfulness is so difficult. And when you look at our call to action and all of the things that we say that we want to witness, that we do witness, and that we want to take action about to either mitigate harm or to be more proactive in other ways. To be crude, our laundry list is so huge that any one issue, this is not meant in any way to diminish how, heartbreaking and horrible this is on both sides, but it would be easy, in quotation marks, for us to focus on that to the exclusion of everything else that is going on, and then we might get locked on another issue. So I think that the equanimity and the kind of balance of finding out where can we make a difference. And to Seth's point, that might not be where our greatest expertise is right now in terms of an issue, but it doesn't mean that we don't care about it.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's see. Where did you go? My friend Mimsy from Massachusetts. You had your hand up and then you're gone.
I'm here.
Oh, okay.
Hi, everyone. So nice to be with you. And I'm struck by, in the introduction by Seth and John, how implicit in the roots of the organization seem that it's so much grounded in practice, and the depth of one's practice, and I'm also struck by the incredible suffering that exists all around the world. And as I look around this group, I see a lot of, I'll call us gray hairs, and so, there tends to be a pull in many of these online programs towards older folks. And so I appreciated so much what was said earlier about, the action. And I think for younger people in particular, developmentally, there's this sense to move. And so I wonder about, that bringing together of the equanimity and the wisdom that as we get older, that can kind of be a holding place, as well as how to find that and bring in that sense of energy that is so needed as well. Having lived through the 60s, and I suspect many of us here did, and to see the assassinations and to see the protests. So that action is really an integral part of moving towards something else. And, the civil rights movement. And so I sit with more of a big question of how might we engage that essential youthful passion for doing, for activity, to be held with the wisdom of the equanimity and the old timers. So I'd be interested in hearing what others might have to say about that. Thank you so much.
I'm thinking about you, John, and how you always say you hate attending meetings and talking, and you want to just go out and do something.
Very true. And Mary O'Connor, to your point, John Murphy here. Yes, back to the 60s, and I resonated then, and I'm going to put in the record here because it's being recorded for any buddy who would pick this up, that everything that we're talking about here is focused on peaceful and nonviolent action. And that is what we are advocating, and not anything different. But having said that, in my earlier day, I remember connecting more with the Berrigan brothers and the way that they felt in the 60s and 70s about what was going on then. And so, softening that a bit as I've gotten older myself, I resonate to the Dalai Lama's advice or exhortation, which is, it isn't enough to be compassionate. And by compassionate there, I take that to mean more cushion, meditation oriented. The other part of that is you must also act. And the acting part is, get your tush off the cush, get active and take all of that dharma and move it out into the street, which all of you folks are familiar with as Zen peacemakers. I've noticed just in our own Philadelphia Shambhala Center that there has been a gradual move toward more activism, and we saw that most recently here in the interest in the No Kings rally. And so, to the point that other Mary Richards and other people were making earlier about the need to get the next generations involved and working alongside us and being able to pass that baton, really, really critical. And before we wrap up, I'll share some information on the mobilizing that is going to go on with the No Kings and Indivisible. But totally relate to your point, and I think that we need to move from living with not knowing and witnessing to actually turning it into where do we meet the people and how do we help.
Just make a couple of observations. When the last No King's Day and a couple of other times, I went to demonstrations. I'm thinking about Nancy being in Scarsdale. I went to demonstrations in Mamaroneck, and I may have been the youngest person there. I'm also 77 at this point. And we talk about the aging out of Zen too. I mean, Zen, by and large, tends to be a group of older people who were, who maybe got interested in the 60s and 70s and have stayed with it. I think about all the great leaders that we've lost recently. I think about Alan Sanoki passing away in December, and Joanna Macy just the other month. I know Edgar O'Hara's has stepped down as abbot of Village Endo and is not in good health. And Joan Halifax recently just had surgery. And I mean, we are kind of at it. Many of our leaders are kind of an old and fragile age. And the question is, how do we bring in, as Kanchi was saying, how do we bring in the newer people, the younger people, and why are we failing at that? And I think that's it's a question for Zen. I think it's a question for Indivisible. I think it's a question for all these organizations. I mean, I remember during the Vietnam War, I started the first anti-war demonstration at my university back in '64. And then it was all a young people's movement at that point. It's just interesting to see how much that's changed, and it is something to worry about. But anyway, I don't have an answer to that, Kanchi or anyone else. I sit with that too and say, why, what is it that we're doing that doesn't appeal to young people? Or do they feel vulnerable and they feel like they can't risk it in the way that we can? I mean, I'm at an age where what is anyone going to do to me? If they put me in a concentration camp, it won't be for that many years. So in some ways, I'm kind of nonchalant about, I'm not afraid about things. But if you're just starting out in a career and who's going to hire you, and are you going to be blacklisted on social media or canceled or something like that, there can be real fears that young people have that we don't necessarily have. So I just want to share that.
Thanks, Seth. Thanks. And we've got a nice queue of people with their hands up. Thank you for doing that. Greg, I think you were first.
Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Real well, real well.
Okay, good. One of the things that I was thinking about, and I'm grateful to be here. I really enjoy this conversation. I think it's really worth having, and I hope it continues on going forward. One of the things I was thinking about is the discussion was what can you do to expand democracy and make it more available to people? And I think that might help dial back some of the hateful rhetoric that seems to be coming from too many sides. I don't want to get too far into the weeds as far as what kind of policies to advocate for, but I've been impressed with something called the Fair Representation Act, which is basically the idea that you would move towards, and again, it gets into things like open primaries regardless of party, ranked choice voting, multi-member election districts. It opens up more people and more parties to the electoral process, and you might get a cross-fertilization of ideas that are not all based on, hate. The other guy is the enemy. And somehow, if we can sort of move away from that or get people to dial back from that, I kind of wonder if we might not have more rational and more compassionate responses as a result of that, rather than simply, try to, how do you tell one group to put down the guns aimed at the other group to put down their guns? We've got to find ways to bring people together in ways that are mutually beneficial, and yet still can address whatever needs and fears that they might have. Anyway, that was just kind of my quick comment on the subject. I didn't want to spend a lot of time on it, but I thought it was at least worth thinking about.
Yes.
Yeah, I think those are all good points. And the questions are, there are all kinds of reforms we could undertake to kind of make democracy more representative and fairer, and to kind of decrease the polarization in the country. Of course, the question is, how do we get from here to there? But I think those are worthy goals, definitely.
Thanks, Greg. Didi Quigley, you've got your hand up. Thank you.
Now?
Now you're good. Now you're
Okay,
good.
thank you. I have such a problem. I just basically want to say thank you so much for the work you're doing. It's such a gift right now. My feeling, part of the overwhelm I feel is that there's just so much information out there, and the amount of time I spend on my little device that I have in my hand now, and it's almost like, boy, I don't want to compare it to candy or something like that, but honestly, I would feel terrible if I missed this today. And it's just one of so many things now. There's just so much information, so much good information. It would be like, oh my God, in the past, I want to march with Dr. King, and oh my gosh, I didn't tune in. I missed it, that kind of feeling. So I think what you're doing is so important. I have a background in Tibetan Buddhism, And then I learned about Bernie and also Joan Halifax, and so drawn to them because of their feelings. So anyway, just a deep thank you, and also kind of a wonderment in terms of people. I'm 79. You two are youngsters. I'm 79, and I heard a lot about from my parents the war effort and how there was this just coming together of people who, in the factories, everybody, huge amount of energy that went into. So it seems that's what is kind of needed now. And I used to, when I first encountered this Buddhist groups and so forth, I thought, well, it's like each one is making bread. And they make such great bread, each one of them, but they're not communicating, they're just each making bread. So now it seems like we're making bread together, which is very auspicious.
Very nice. Thank you.
John Sykes?
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'm heartened to hear this group coming together, and some of the signatures that you have on your original documentation. As others, I associate with Upaya online quite a bit with them, and I see a lot of younger people there, and I would wonder what the draw is that Joan has that seems to be able to bring more younger folks to her group, our group, I guess I could say now. One of the things that I'm thinking about, and others have talked about this now, is that saving democracy, I think, has a whole lot to do with how can we repair the rift between what appears to be the two big factions of left and right. And I think about Thich Nhat Hanh, and he was all about peacemaking. And what I would wonder is if this is something that our group here, and I've just joined, our group here might have as kind of a hallmark of what can we do to help bring about peace, to help bring people together. I note that a good friend of mine, her family is beginning to break up because of the Charlie Kirk murder on that. So we're getting further and further apart. And I would wonder if there's anything that we as a group, bringing in other groups, might be able to do to promote peace, which might be the savior of democracy. I'm not quite sure what that is, but I would think that not a lot of people know about Buddhist movements, but I would think that if there is a way that we can hallmark a peace movement here to bring about the rift that we're experiencing as a country, that might be a good direction to go in.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, John. Unless there's any comment on that, well, let's go to Zabeth Tenfu.
Zabeth, we can't hear you, Zabeth.
It doesn't show you as being muted, but we can't hear you, Zabeth. I don't know if you have microphone volume turned down or something like that, or no, we don't get you at all.
There, no.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
There we go.
Yes.
Okay. So I am part of the Mountains and Rivers Order, and in the branch in New York City, in Brooklyn, Fire Lotus Temple. And I just wanted to put some hope for the young people to join us, because every Sunday we are offering beginning instructions during the program. And since the election, I have to say, we had been having like almost 20, 25 new people coming every Sunday, and a lot of them are coming back. So the door is open for young people in some centers, and I think that I will, in my position as an elder and older than everyone who said an age today, because I am in my 80s already. And but I really would like to talk about this coalition because until now we had been kind of reluctant in our talks and all that to bring too much politics, but things are changing. And I have the feeling that it is a good time for me because I am the only one from this group right now screen to bring the existence of that coalition for democracy and have that everything under an umbrella. Because in New York City, we have a lot of spots, let's say, to get involved. But it will be nice to have a kind of united calendar for all of us. So that's all what I have to say. But thank you.
Thank you, Isabel.
Yeah.
Caroline, I see your hand. Hi.
Hello. And I'm with Zen Peacemakers. I just finished the 2-year training along with Mimsy in cohort 3. And I hope I'm learning more about how to put my own peacemaking into practice. So in thinking about that, I get that we need to take action in bigger ways, but that I recognize that some of my day-to-day small actions can contribute. And I have to sometimes think about, like with COVID and how one tiny virus could shoot around the world. I want to believe that our small actions can ripple outward as well. And I haven't been so good about checking my own anger and how I'm sharing that. I haven't been so skillful, but in this last week, I've really reflected on, wow, when I participate in a discussion that adds to greater separation, and us and them, I am really not helping. And that I have to go back to my Zen Peacemaker training about deep listening and offering a space for that without judgment and not add more anger to the world because there's way more than enough. So that just one thought. I'm going to just touch on 2 other things that I'm wondering how generational some of this schism is, that that the young people are joining in ways that seem like, wow, how did they get like that? We thought we brought people up in this world differently from this. But just wondering how much can be just a generational shift, that the the 60s and 70s we were in one generation and now it's this other one. So that's just a broad question. In an idea with getting more young people from our local Unitarian church is they're seeing the need to offer free childcare to get people to come and be there, younger families. And childcare could be a really important part of what, getting young people to be involved in something. So just throwing those things out there. But But then I hope on my iPad I can show this. Let's see. I made I made some signs that for the first March for Science in 2017. I don't know if you can see this,
Yes.
but when I protest, this one is "We are interbeings," and this one is, we are interconnected. And I decided back then to make those because I knew that the protest would be so full of anger, and that I wanted to remind us all what we felt underneath that, and to be that for my fellow protesters too. And what has been so wonderful, and I'm so glad these foam core signs have lasted all these years, is that people want to have their picture taken holding the signs up. So hundreds of people have shown up, have decided to do that, and some haven't, but it's really heartwarming to have that kind of message out there. And if we're thinking about peaceful nonviolence, I just try to have an imagination about what could it look like if a protest was full of that. Not that they all should be or can be, but it's just one little thing that I could do and other people could do too. So just wanted to share that. I really appreciate all of this work, and I appreciate coming together here, and I hope that my listening and everyone else's listening is encouraging to you in your work, and I can show up for you like this too. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Carolyn, and thank you for sharing your signs. They're wonderful. I think they've made more than a few of us laugh. John or Seth, any comments on anything that's been said?
I think there are some very profound points that have been raised here. One is how not to create greater division and polarity in the world as we go about our business. The world is already so polarized, and almost all the information, someone was talking about all the information they get on their phone, all the information is aimed at enraging us and making us feel, amplifying our emotions in some kind of way. Mm-hmm. And the question is, how do we go about this business without getting caught up in the hysteria? I know a lot of people I speak to tell me that they feel very depressed and very like they feel powerless and there's nothing they can do. And they feel very gloomy about things. And I just want to say, it's interesting, I don't feel that way. I'm very happy doing this work. For me, this is joyous work. Mm-hmm. I feel like I'm doing something, and I'm engaged, and I'm doing something meaningful, and I'm never happier than when I'm making myself useful in some kind of way. I think the question about how do we talk to people who think differently and feel differently than we do is a very important question. And of course, a dialogue means that people on both sides are willing to have that dialogue. And there are some people you can have that kind of conversation with, and some people that you can't. Some people aren't interested in deep listening and sharing ideas, but are only interested in debating and winning points or bullying people or intimidating people. So you can't really have a conversation. You have to have someone else who's a willing participant. What I suggest when you get into a conversation like that with someone who's willing to have it with you is that your first aim is to listen and to understand who is this person and how do they get to be to their particular beliefs, the way they are. And then the second is, if you disagree with them, first make sure that they've heard that you've understood them and heard them. Repeat back what they said to them so they know that they were heard accurately. And then not say this is why you're wrong, but this is how I see things differently. That you create that kind of open space where things, but that's very, very hard to do. There are groups like Braver Angels right now that that's their primary work, is to talk across that gap. But I think those of us who have family members that are on the other side know how difficult these conversations can be. And then sometimes the only thing you can do is remember that this relative of yours who holds all these horrible viewpoints is also the person who remembers your children's birthdays, and is also the person who invited you to their house for Thanksgiving, and that our politics isn't all that we are. We're full human beings who have many dimensions to us, and we can disagree with people very much about their views and still care about them very much as human beings. And doing that is a lot easier to say than it is to do. But I think that's our job, is to do that. I think one other point I want to make in the interest of talking about not knowing as a precept is I really have no idea what's going to happen to us in the future. But I had a member of my Sangha who told me this story recently that gave me some hope. She is from Pakistan. She's a Sufi. She had to leave Pakistan. There was a fatwa issued against her, a death warrant by the mullahs. She said there was a time when the city that she grew up in, that it was a very vibrant city with arts and culture and music and dance. There was a cafe society. People would get together and talk, And that after the mullahs took over about 40 years ago, that all died. Okay, everyone went underground. Okay, the cafes closed. There wasn't any, people didn't dress up in beautiful clothes anymore. They didn't, the music, couldn't perform music. All the plays disappeared and so forth. So she came here to live in the United States. But she says she's gone back recently to her town where she lived, and it's all back again. The cafes are open, the writers are there, the plays are being put on, the music performances are there. She says there's something about life that wants to continue. People want their individuality to continue, their creativity, their joy to continue. And while a fascist regime can suppress that for a while, okay, it can't do it forever. So that even if the worst comes to worst, even if this regime goes completely fascist, even if the worst happens and some of us end up in concentration camps and so forth, that doesn't mean that we still don't have a job to do, which is to keep our own spark alive and be ready for a moment when it can reemerge again. So that may be our main job in the future, is just kind of harboring the spark of humanity and keeping it alive and waiting for moments for it to reappear. So even that can be a wonderful and fulfilling job, I think about Viktor Frankl in the concentration camps writing Man's Search for Meaning. Even in the worst of circumstances, there's a place for us where we can keep the human heart alive. As a student of Zen, one thing we do in our Sangha is we do a koan every week. So we've gotten through about 200 of them so far in the series. And what I'm impressed by as I read these koans is what these Zen masters lived through. Periods of crumbling of empire, revolution, rebellion, times when Buddhism was banned and all the monasteries were closed and everyone was defrocked and so forth. There's a saying, in times of war, sit up straight. Okay, that's what we do. Even in the worst times, we take our seat, we find our place, we keep our heart alive. And that in itself can be a joyous activity, even in the worst of times. So I just want to hold that out, that we can do this with joy. We don't have to do it with rage and anger, although there's plenty to be rageful and angry about. So, John, you had a question you wanted to ask the group, didn't you? Did you want to ask
Well,
that?
I'll just pick up, Seth, on what you beautifully said, and that is, we'll make a case for urging everyone to take action, but the how can I help, what can I do, is an individual response, obviously, for each one of us. And one of the things that we'll talk about is we have this outreach to do these rallies and protest marches with no kings and indivisible, and that is only one thing. And Seth made the point earlier of your thing might be contacting your elected representatives or working locally with a social service agency to help immigrants or the hungry or the homeless, or it might be writing poetry and sharing it online. Each one of us has our own gift and skill and predisposition, and so protest rallies might not be the answer for every one of us for various reasons. And the question that I had, and I think some people have done a really beautiful job of addressing it, is the unknowing that we all have right now, because we don't know what the future will hold. But given that as a constant, what might we be doing right now that maybe we aren't? That's kind of a general question for the group.
That's a good one, John. I want to recognize Jacqueline's had her hand up here for a while too. Jacqueline, do you want to?
Yes. Well, I wanted to thank Carolyn for bringing humor into the conversation, and I'm noticing that the direction it flowed into a different direction, which is I think it's really radical to express joy at this time, because the conversation is being led in a very dark direction, and it's a revolution to funnel it into to remember joy and to remember humor. And so I was very happy to hear what Seth just had to say about the importance of that with this. And I think holding the vision of not just fighting against the dark forces, but also what is the light and what does that look like, and holding to that during a dark time is so important. And so I'm happy to hear that this organization has that in mind, because it's bearing witness to suffering and joy. And so I just wanted to thank Carolyn and Seth for bringing that into the conversation.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Thank you. Just maybe to put a one-liner on this, I'm reminded Emma Goldman in her 1931 autobiography is famously quoted as saying, "If I can't dance, I don't want to be part of your revolution." So I've always loved that. Let's keep it light. So thank you for those comments. We just have a few more minutes. If anyone else has a question or a comment, or maybe more properly, John and Seth, if you'd like to bring us to a close, and feel free to shamelessly plug your website. You could put it in. I think someone already did put it in the chat, but you could repeat that too and let everybody know how to get in touch with you. And
I am doing that.
we can go ahead and say what it is too.
Buddhist Coalition for Democracy.org.
Pretty literal. That works.
Yep.
That works. Seth, any wrap-up statement from you, or?
No, it's just been a delight listening to all of you today and being among you. And thank you for allowing me to be here with you.
The wisdom of the collective, huh?
Mm-hmm.
I love it. Okay, well, thank you all for staying with us for the hour and a half, and most sincerely, thank you, John and Seth, for being our guests and sharing the work you're doing. And given the trajectory that you're on, I'll really be interested to watch and see how the organization grows. We'd love to have you back again, maybe sometime in 26, to do a check-in to see how things are going with you all.